I told a buddy, I just found out a guy that I've known for a long time. He's been sober 5 years. I'm like, why didn't you tell me? Like, why didn't you tell me that you were sober? He goes, I don't know. I just don't tell a lot of people. I'm like, but it's you that were braver than me. And that bravery would have impacted me. I would have if you had told me that, I think it would have inspired me to do something. So I think just, again, the idea of this is just that I can count maybe this many people that I know that don't drink. It's just such a small number.
Yeah. Especially at Kent. Right. But you know what
but even beyond that, do you know a ton of people?
I don't know anyone.
Exactly. So it doesn't, go to Army buddies.
My mother-in-law.
Okay. Yeah. That's my mom.
Yeah.
My mom's never had a drink of alcohol. Yeah. She's the only human being that I think I've ever met
I think my mother-in-law is probably the same way.
Okay.
It's funny though, because our rehearsal dinner back in 2016, we had our wedding in DC because that's where I'm from. Right. And we went to dinner, and it was my parents, her parents, I think my brother, his wife, stuff like that. Right. And we're all going to drink. My family's wild. Right. And we all order. I'll never forget it. And we get around to Susan, and I was literally just about to order for her. I was like, I should probably do the soda water. Is that great? She's like, I'll take a margarita. And everyone stopped. It's like when you hear someone fart really loud in church or something, right? You kind of just
did I just hear that?
Yeah, right?
Is that real? Was that the pew?
I shouldn't embarrass you because it happens to all of us, but okay. And she orders it. And I was like, Susan, I thought you didn't drink. As long as I've known you, you haven't drank. She's like, well, everyone was doing, and we're like, don't drink that. You don't need to drink that. We're fine.
Yeah.
But to your point, I don't think I've ever really, when I was 18, Lieutenant Mike Nelson, who I think became Colonel Nelson, really good guy. We were in the 82nd Airborne together, and he came out of VMI, and I was 18, man. I was wild. That's why I went to the Army. I was wild.
Self-imposed to regulate that wildness, or you were like, I need something that's going to give me boundaries kind of a deal?
I'm very blessed in the sense that I feel like I have a good amount of emotional intelligence. And maybe because I studied psychology in college and stuff like that. But I knew who I was I know who I am at different phases in my life, right? And when I was 18, I wanted to be, I was in junior ROTC as a football player, as a baseball player, and I went to high school in Arkansas, right? So it was very much country, right? And dude, we had a lot of bonfires. And what happens at high school bonfires, man? We didn't have a lot to do in our town. It was 3,000 people, 7,000 people in our town, right? Not even. My graduating class might have been 75 to 150 people, right? And we would go to bonfires because everyone had farms. And, we would set these big bonfires on a Friday, Saturday night, and we would all just get blasted on Bud Ice and Ice House and the highest alcohol content beers at the time, right? And I'm dating myself. It's 26 years ago, right?
Yeah.
But
I think it was Steel Reserve.
Yeah, that was probably one of them too, right? And so, but you get a bunch of 16, 17, 18-year-old kids. Your parents all know whose farm you're at. And they're like, just don't drink and drive, right? And you're out there and you set bonfires and you sleep in your cars or whatnot, but you just get fucking hammered, man. And I loved to have fun. And so I think what happened is I wanted to be in the military. I knew that. My brother was a Marine. My stepfather was in the Air Force. And I loved the pageantry. I loved the lockstep, the discipline. And I loved the sense of doing something selfless service, right? Greater than you. And I wanted to travel and see the world. And I was like, man, maybe the Navy is the way, because I was in Navy junior ROTC. So I thought about being a submarine officer or a Navy SEAL, obviously. Those are the two things that I really wanted to do in the early years of high school. So I got to see some military bases, go out to Coronado, go out to Kings Bay, Georgia, stuff like that. Well, all my friends were basically going to the University of Arkansas. That's why I'm a Razorback fan now, right? And I was like, man, I want to go to the University of Arkansas too. So, I took my ACT and then applied through the ROTC programs, because I did work myself up in high school, to the second highest level of ROTC. by my senior year, right? And that was my plan. But they wouldn't give me a scholarship enough to cover my tuition, right? And they wouldn't do it until the second year of college. And my parents were not rich, right? Like my stepdad was retired at the time, and then my mom worked odd jobs, but very middle class family in Arkansas, right? And so, at one point my stepdad came up to me and we were talking. I think we were fishing or something like that. And he was like, "Hey, let's have a talk." And I said, "All right, what's up?" And he goes, "Do you really want to go to college right now?" He's like, I think you should, but I don't know if you should go right now. And I just looked at him and I go, "Well, what do you mean?" And he goes, "Look, I know all you want to do is drink and fuck. There's a better place for that." I said, "You're probably right." He's like, "All right, so we're going to join the military then?" And I was like, "Absolutely." So that's when I somehow ran across the Army recruiter. Went down to MEPS. My parents influenced me the very first time. They're like, "Oh, you should be a computer programmer." So I went to MEPS trying to all of a sudden change everything I've ever wanted to do, become a computer programmer and get some college money. This is 1998. And they didn't offer me like the full package or whatnot. And it was the first time in my life that I had ever controlled a negotiation, in the sense that I called my brother. He was like, "Don't do it if they don't give you what you want," because they wanted me to do something else. And so I walked out. And this Army recruiter, to his ability, was very cool about it. Even though we drove 3.5 hours to Little Rock, where the MEP station was, he took me down there. It was like 4 a.m. when we left. We got there around 8. I did all my stuff, passed all my stuff, right? Like I never did any drugs in high school or anything like that. It was just alcohol and sports. Like that's it. I didn't have to study. I was great grade point average. I just did what I needed to do and have fun and work out. And anyway, so then there was like a 3-month period, I think, where I went to MEPS, didn't sign up. And then it was like, "What are you going to do? What are you going to do?" And then I just started doing more research and I started hanging out more with this Army recruiter. So he was really good. His name was, I can't remember his name. Anyway, so I came back to him. I said, "Look, man, I know what I said I wanted to do before, but that's not me. Like, I want to jump out of planes. I want to get the $40,000 for college. I'm going to be a Green Beret. And that's it. And I'm going to do 4 years." And he said, "All right." So he took me down there. I became a forward observer, got my parachute contract to be a paratrooper in there, got my $40,000 for GI Bill, and I was gone like a month later.
Wow.
Yeah. Fort Sill, Oklahoma, to Fort Benning, Georgia, and then to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, where I was in the 82nd Airborne, and then kind of going through that phase, traveling, deploying a little bit, still before 9/11. Then I went to Special Forces selection in October 2000. And I got selected, and which was amazing because at the time I was like the youngest kid to go through the course. I was 20 years old. I was an E4. I got 3 ranks for all my ROTC stuff when I joined. So I was an E4. I made the bare minimum age requirement, rank requirement. Went in there. Great experience. Great story, maybe for another time, right? Anyway, I became a Green Beret, and then I did that for 20-something years, man.
And it's taking you everywhere.
Everywhere. Yeah. It's been a great time. But, I think one thing, I think that you want to talk about too is like how alcohol has probably played a role in my life. And
yeah, and I think, I would say, I think maybe let's work backwards just a little bit, if that's okay. I would say, if I was to just ask, because this is when you find out somebody decided to stop drinking, I'm like, what was that moment? Where were you? Do you think, was there an exact moment? I know sometimes there's always a leading up to it, but usually there's a point where you say, "I'm drawing a line in the sand." Do you remember that day? What had happened? What had maybe in the days leading up to it, what had happened? Maybe give me some detail onto that.
All right. Well, first off, I love hard shit. Like, don't ask me to do anything if it's not hard. Like, I love it. golf is hard, right? Being a Green Beret is hard. Not just getting there, but being a Green Beret, like an actual soldier in the special forces running, like it's hard. And I thrive off of that. Right. So I've always liked to do really hard things. And if they've been listening for the past 10 minutes of me ramble, alcohol was very much ingrained into my life. Like the culture in the Army supports a lot of alcohol abuse, right? Especially post 9/11. Okay. They're not saying go out and drink your faces off, but they're not
saying don't.
Outlets to not, right? Yeah. It's, hey, you're off. You know, they give you your safety brief, which is a lot like, if you fuck, wear a condom. If you drink, don't drive. If you need anything, call me, right? Boom, done, right? And that's what we did. I mean, you worked hard, you play hard. So all that was going on. In 2022, I retired. I started my VA claims process for my veterans disability, which is still ongoing today. And I was getting an MRI on my back, which my back is killing me today. Like actually for 5 days now, like I heard it acting like a 10-year-old.
Like right now?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Right now, right? Okay. Like my back is
okay.
in a lot of pain.
Let me know if you need to.
No,
get up
we're
and
good.
Stretch.
We're good. It's just
I got a ton of stretches for you.
Okay, good. Yeah. So I go get an MRI, and basically what I'm expecting from the MRI and what everyone is expecting from the MRI is, oh, you've just got like degenerative spine condition from all of your parachute jumps, from wearing body armor, from all the IEDs, etc. Right? And I was like, yeah, cool. Like I can still operate. I know how to move it. I go to physical therapy every 3 weeks. Like that's all I was looking for. Well, they come back and they say, dude, you have a tumor in your abdomen that's the size of a softball. And I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, that's insane. And so they're telling me this, but I will tell you this. When I found that out, that was the beginning of me. That was how this all started. Okay. I went fishing with my buddy, who's my physical therapist, my hunt buddy. And we went on like the river. So I don't even remember where, but we were catching these big like sturgeon. Like it was like an amazing morning, dude. And it was in I think January or February, whatever it was. And I'm in the truck on the way back, and I open up my email, and it's like, oh, your test result is back from your MRI. And I log into my chart.
They don't call you. This is how they tell you.
This is how they tell me, man. And I look on it, and again, all I'm expected to see is like, oh, degenerative back, yeah. Right? Okay, great. Let me file this away. I got to send it to the VA. And it's like tumor and possibly malignant. And I'm going, is this my file?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, my brain kind of just like locks up, right? And I give it to my butt, and I'm like, Joe, like, I don't know what this means. And I knew what it meant, but I was in shock, right? And he looks at it and he's like, all right, take a deep breath. It should not be telling you like that. Like, because he's a physical therapist. He's smarter than I am in those terms, right? So I get home, and I thought, like, at that point, 42 years old, 2 kids, one is 4, one is one is 6, one is 4, right? And I'm like, holy crap, how do I have cancer? Right? I was like, dude, I don't smoke. I don't do tobacco anymore. Like, I don't do drugs because I'm still in the Army, right? Like, well, all I do is drink alcohol. And the only other thing I did was something else. It's probably not the right place to talk about. And I get home. My world is kind of shattered, right? Like, everyone thought that, even I thought that I was indestructible, immune, immortal, right? Now, I knew I was mortal, but in the sense of like a injury perspective and health perspective. So anyway, it turns out that I guess a couple of days after that, to answer your question, I just said, all right, I am going to stop anything that is not contributing to my health. It just included alcohol. And I just stopped. And the reason I stopped was I was like, look, let's wait until I can get a biopsy. Problem is that where my tumor was located, I went in 2 different times to try to get a biopsy, and they couldn't reach it. So for about 5 to 6 months, I was under the impression that I had cancer, but no one knew how bad it was. No one knew what to do about it because we didn't know for sure. But that was the major impression that we were getting. So I was scheduled to go into surgery to just have it totally removed, not knowing if it's cancerous or not. And then like a week before my surgery was scheduled, I have a neighbor who's a doctor, and he was scheduled me for an endoscopy, or not, a colonoscopy.
Yep.
He's like, let's do a colonoscopy. And if I can get in there where it's at, I will. And I just remember going in for the colonoscopy and coming out, and he was like, dude, I got it. And I'm like, what? And he's like, I got a lot of samples. He's like, I'm so happy we were able to get it, because he didn't want to puncture any of my organs.
Sorry for laughing, but it's like he's excited, right?
So excited because he knew what was going on. He knows me, right?
Yeah.
Like, beauty about kind of living here is you kind of know a lot of people. You get to know a lot of people in all different fields, right? And I was like, okay. And so they rushed it over to get it tested, and I got the results back like a day before my operation. I was like, and they said, oh, it's benign. And I was like, start crying. I was like, thank God, man. Like, thank God. And at this point, I had stopped drinking until my surgery. So I had been like 4 months at that point.
Okay.
Had my operation to have it removed anyway. But I pushed it to like November of last year. So last year I had my tumor removed, last November.
Okay.
And I just never had a desire to pick it back up.
So that was how long? How long ago?
22 months.
So you're at 22 months.
Yeah, this is my 23rd month.
Okay. What do you remember the day? Or what was the date?
It's February.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think it's around my birthday. My birthday's February 1st.
Okay.
So I want to say it was around like the 1st to the 12th.
Okay.
Around there. I don't remember the date because, yeah, remember, it was like so much part of my life. And I never woke up one day going, oh man, I feel like I should quit drinking. Now, there's a lot of other reasons that I decided to do it that kind of made sense as I was going through the process. Like 2 weeks in, and I'm like, man, I don't have a hangover. This is great, right? Like, so those things were occurring in that first 4 months. But it wasn't the nexus of me saying, I need to stop drinking alcohol because I'm an alcoholic or because my life is derailing.
Yep.
It was, how do I keep my life from derailing? And I haven't looked back. I mean, so that, just to answer your question, that is the nexus of why I decided to stop drinking. And it's been the greatest thing that's ever happened to me outside of my family, obviously, right? But like, I'm so happy. It's the longest I've been before was like 6 months. And so, and I did that on a deployment because we weren't supposed to drink. And I was the guy that was in charge of my half ODA. We were in South America. And I knew my buddies liked to drink, so I was always like their DD. So I was accustomed to going to bars or playing poker till 4 a.m. and just drinking water. Like, didn't bother me, right? Which is really weird because
It is really weird.
A hard time having meaningless conversations with people.
Yeah.
And so when you go to a bar, that's a lot of what the conversations are, right?
I say it's like a record.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I'm on the 4th conversation. I've had this one with you 4 times already in the last 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, it'd be one thing if you were spreading this out, but like, we've done this one already.
Done it.
Like, just.
And then if it's like, if you're going to talk to a new person or whatever, right? Like, there's no end game for me.
Yeah.
So I have no desire to actually talk to you in a bar, right?
Yeah.
Like, but I did it, right? And I'd go there and I'd have fun with my buddies and whatever.
But this is interesting because that's not typically the case. Like, until I stopped drinking, I wouldn't just go out to the bar and not drink. I don't go to the bar anymore. I could. Yeah. It's just not an enjoyable place for me to go anymore. But so you're saying for that 6 months, or you're saying every once in a while you'd be like, you know what, I'm going to go and I'm going to play poker with the guys, and I'm just not going to drink tonight.
Yeah. While we were in Suriname, yeah, I would go out with them because it was fun. Like, I still had a good time messing around and watching my guys try to, pick up girls at the time. and cracking jokes. But really, it was, you got to remember, it goes back to what I said earlier. When you go to war with someone, or you're a brother, and those were my brothers, like we had all been at war together. Like we were on the same ODA, right? Like I've watched my buddy try to throw grenades and they end up going behind him and like laughing at him on the radio while we're in an ambush.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what are you doing, you idiot?
Yeah.
Carl. And, but like,
sorry, Carl.
But like Carl's great, right?
Yeah.
Like he and I would play poker a lot together, and that was a fun time, right? And then I'd have other guys that were parts of other units that would hang out with us and stuff like that. So it was, look, it was fun. It was like I'd go to the bar with them and have a good time, and but I wouldn't drink. However, I was also training, and I wanted to make sure that my record was clean, right? And I remember coming back I'd work out like 3 days a week while we were down in South America, and outside of doing my daily duties, right?
What are the years for this, right?
2008.
Okay.
2009, 2010.
Okay.
And I remember coming back from like an 8-mile run, and it's like 100 and something degrees perpetually, right? And I walk in. We're like there for like 7 months, man. I hated this place. I was just like, God, I'm so ready to go home. And I walk in from like this 8-mile run, like dripped in sweat. I walk straight to the beer fridge. I take out like this 20-ounce like German beer or whatever it was that we got down there. And my buddies were all watching a movie or something, right? And I crack it open and I just chugged it in the kitchen. I didn't say anything to anyone. I just downed the whole damn thing. I'm dripping in sweat. We had tile floors and stuff, right? And all my buddies just start cheering. They're like, yes, yes. But I didn't drink after that either, man. I just needed one. I just needed some carb replenishment.
That's interesting. I was never just a one kind of a deal, but you just had an intense run. There's nothing better than a beer.
Yeah. And I wasn't doing
the Carlsberg went down easy.
I think that's what it was. It's Carlsberg, to be quite honest. Man. Yeah. It's a green can.
Yeah. It's Carlsberg.
You can get it.
Sorry if it's not German. I don't know, but
I don't know
it's Carlsberg
right?
is everywhere.
It's everywhere in the world. Man. Yeah. I had it in Iraq. I had it everywhere. Right.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, that was the longest I had been without drinking alcohol in my life. I mean, probably since I was 16.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe 15.
Yeah.
I don't know. So this time around, did it for different reasons, obviously, but I love it.
Yeah.
I don't imagine going back.
Well, so what, I guess the historicity of this with your family or growing up, were people, dads drinking, moms drinking, brothers drinking, sisters? Like I grew up, we didn't have alcohol in the house.
Wow.
Zero.
Okay.
So I was like, once I was out of the house, I'm like, I'm going to go figure this out. And I did. So there's all these levels to it. But what was kind of what's your back story to?
I remember my biological dad, he owned his own window cleaning business. He was an immigrant. And, I remember, there's pictures, right, of me with like a Miller Lite can in my hand as I'm like 5 or 6 years old. Like, I'm sure there wasn't anything in it, right? Or a sip. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, to be quite honest. But I just remember like he always had a drink after work. And it was probably a couple beers, maybe a few beers. Like I only always remember seeing one can. I never remember seeing multiples, but I also realize now that he could have just thrown them away. And then after he left, that kind of probably created some trauma in my life, right? He was very abusive. And then my stepfather came into my life a few years later. He's the one that raised me. And I remember at his wedding with my mom, I was, I think 14. And that was the first time I got hammered. And my brother-in-law and his brother and their college buddies were there. And at the time, I think they were probably in their early 20s. And they showed me how to shotgun beers. And we were in the back just shotgunning beers, doing what you do in the early 90s and late 80s, right? And I was 14, 12, something like that, 13, right? And I remember I got so hammered, man. I was throwing up all night. I probably had alcohol poisoning. I slept on the curb in front of our house for a couple hours, I think. And then my brother brought me inside and I had to sleep on my side, and I had a baseball game the next morning, and I'll never forget it. And I was a catcher. And so I'm playing baseball, and then it started to rain, and I heard my brother, because he was there with my stepdad, and he goes, well, at least he'll get hydrated now. And I didn't really know what that meant, but I thought it was funny. I remember laughing under my catcher's mask. And I never felt so horrible in my life, but that was really like my first ever hangover. I had a lot of them since then. Not anymore, but it was... So I would say, yeah, I grew up with alcohol. My stepdad loved scotch. I remember drinking scotch that day in a red Solo cup with some grapes in it for some reason. And I'll never forget that core memory, man. And yeah, so grew up, and then in Arkansas, right? Like you just drink alcohol. So yeah, we had alcohol in the house. I never stole it though. I never stole their alcohol or anything like that. I know when
You didn't need to sneak it.
No.
There was, even that was, if you were 14 and it was kind of like, yeah, it's cute. You got super hungover and you threw up. Yeah. It wasn't like somebody's like, don't do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, what was this? 1997. I would say I was a junior in high school. I graduated in 98. Computers were just becoming big back then. And, my buddy knew someone that got him driver's license sleeves, like you did back in the day, right? Like you'd get the laminate and then you would just make a printed fake ID on Photoshop, and you would print it out and then laminate the ID, and you'd have like an ID that says you're 21 for the most part, right? I used that for 4 years. So I joined the Army, had my fake ID on me, would go to the bars, all that, right? So it was, I did it in high school because I always had facial hair. Right. And so
you've had facial hair since you were like 12,
I had facial hair since I was 14 years old, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. 15 years old.
After that first hangover, it just grew in right away.
Sprouted, man. So yeah, I don't know. Right. There's a history.
Yeah.
Look, my wife still drinks wine and she'll have drinks, and I'm fine with it. Like
it's not abnormal.
Not abnormal, man.
Yeah.
I'm like, you do you. Like, I'm not doing this because I thank God. Like I don't know. I'm not an alcoholic, right? Like I wasn't, at least in the traditional sense, right? I wasn't like going and getting shit faced and stuff like that. Now, did COVID kind of change a lot of things? Yeah. Like I remember being locked down in a new place. I was starting a new business. And man, I would just drink till like 3 or 4 in the morning. And I'd be watching YouTube videos on like how to do digital marketing and all sorts of stuff, man, because I was trying to build my business up. And then we would drink a lot. Like I remember we'd go to the lake and I'd be drinking at 9 in the morning. Like we'd have a cooler full of high noons. My wife and I, we'd have a 2 and a 4-year-old, and like I'd be putting them away, man, all day at the lake. I look back on that and I kind of regret that.
But it's normal.
I guess.
I'm telling you, it's normal. Like this is what people do. That's why, again, that's why the reason you're sitting here is because it is unique to have done that and been a part of what is kind of normal for everyone right now, it seems to me. And then just to go, I'm just going to stop doing that. Like I always say, it's like if and you work out, you're fit. That was always hard for me to do one or the other, or to do both. I couldn't. Sorry, I would pick one or the other. But yeah, I mean, your decision to, I lost my train of thought a little bit, but your decision to do that is extremely unique, because no one around you is just thinking the same way.
Mm-hmm.
So
what was your turning point?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to come back to you. Nice try to turn this onto me. But yeah, quickly it would be, I would say, man, I was drinking, almost every day for 10 years. That would have been probably from, roughly 2000 and, right in the 2006 to 2016, there was a moment where I actually got Lyme disease.
Interesting.
And I never I don't think I don't know, maybe it tripped a wire in me. Something happened. I remember having like a fever of like 105, thinking I was going to die. And then just like something like came over me. I was like, man, you should probably like ease up on the drinking.
Yeah.
So I did I stopped drinking on a Monday. Then I drank Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Then I did Monday, Tuesday. And then I did
Love it.
Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And so I kind of just did that little tiptoe into it. And then I just kind of stopped drinking during the week.
Yeah.
And then I would just make up for lost time on the weekends, and more binge drink. I think I did a couple years ago. I did do 4 months. I just was like, I'm going to just do 4 months. But that was like just to prove to myself that I could do it. No intention of stopping, let's just take a break, right? Like dry January or whatever. And then I was like, I did January. And I was like, I can do February, March, April. And then I remember it was my birthday into April. We were at the Whitecaps. I'm with my buddies. I'm like, I did this. I was with my wife. I'm like, I can drink again, right? She's like, you can do whatever you want. You're an adult. So I just started up again and just went right back into it. It wasn't like, there was no like, I'm just can moderate and whatnot. So, and I'm a bourbon guy. Like at the baseball game, that's all they have is beer. So I was like drinking beers, but I went home and switched over to what I normally would drink. And so then it was, so I know the day because the Lions lost in the playoffs last year, January 28th.
Was it the NFC Championship?
Yeah.
So that's when you stopped.
Yeah. The next day.
Wow.
Yeah. I just remember I was at the Elbow Room. Have you ever been there?
No,
right on Fuller.
Someone just went there the other day and said they have amazing burgers.
Yeah, they do.
Is that true?
Just a total dive bar.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right off the highway.
Great.
Yeah.
It's by the Starbucks, right? On
yeah.
Fuller, right?
Yeah. The Starbucks is new, but the Elbow Room's been there forever.
Yeah.
So
small place.
Yeah. I just remember sitting there and I couldn't really drink enough to get anywhere with the buzz. And then drove home, of course, right? And again, I've got a 3 and a 4-year-old. Yeah. Like this the next morning, just like, whoa, man, what do you like? You know how this ends. Like, how this ends.
Right.
And I think I just got to that point where I was like, okay, I did it. I did something really, really well for 25 years. I know what the results are like, but I'm brave to try things. I'll experiment with things just as just in life. Right. I was like, you're going to tell yourself that you couldn't just like experiment with this, like experiment with a new way of life, something different. Right. And so that's literally what I did. I was like, I'm just going to try this. I'm going to see if 25 years look like that. What would 25 years look like going the other direction? And not like, again, right. I would have never said, I'm an alcoholic. And some people get you got to say that. And I don't know. I just know that, it really is amazing what I accomplished, what you potentially accomplished while consuming copious amounts of alcohol. I always think that's the fascinating thing, because what's possible now for me, what I feel like, what I'm capable of now is just doesn't even compare. But you get blinded by, and we could go into all that, but that's kind of where I'm at. So I'm, coming in. We're right now, as this is being recorded, we are December 1st? Today, December 2nd.
First or second?
Second. December 2nd. So January, coming into a year on January 28th.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You can do it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I think it's, I do think there's certainly, I don't know if I shared this with you, but I really struggle with insomnia. That's really been the biggest hurdle probably for me physically. That alcohol was just such a part of my life that sleep was like related to that. And so I've been, dealing with that. But if I get good sleep, I'm like, life is crazy fun, crazy good. there's joy, there's natural dopamine, it is hard to explain to people that are drinking, because you're just if somebody was like, oh, you're not going to be able to drink again the rest of your life, I would have been like, whoa. To me, I would have been overwhelming. Like, even my wife, a couple of times, she's just said, she goes, you have a drinking problem. You know that, right? And I was like, I'll show you like what a drinking problem looks like. Like, don't back me into a corner kind of a deal. Like, that's how I don't take the advice of people. I just like do the opposite of what everyone tells me to do. But, I'm starting to experience things that, I didn't think were possible. People have told me the year marker is an interesting, kind of milestone. Maybe it's just the year, but like, I think the amount of time it does take for some of that, even the gray matter in your brain, a lot of things just reconstruct themselves, where I'm just like basically just self-destructing, self-sabotaging, right? Like physically, mentally. You think about sleep, right? You are never going to go into deep sleep with alcohol. No. It is an impossibility. Mm-hmm. Like, you can track it. You can go get an Apple Watch. You can go get a, what's the other devices that people wear?
The Whoop or whatever.
Exactly. It's simply not going to happen. So I tell this to people with my insomnia. I say, the worst part about not drinking and having insomnia is that I actually feel exactly the same way. I feel hungover. Sleep deprivation is so much of what that hangover is. The problem is I don't have the ethanol that would be that boosting fuel. Like, even though you were hungover, you still get that. It's a powerful fuel. Like, your body's going to burn things in a certain order, right? Yeah. I mean, I'm not a doctor, but if there's ethanol in your system, it's going to burn that first. Then sugars after that, right? Carbs. Then eventually it's going to get to fat. But then the fat reserves are a good fuel, but that's just kind of the order that things are going to be. So I always just say, it's depressing, even though I know I'm doing the right thing, to still not get sleep and then just be like, man, I'm going to just I'm still going, man. Yeah. I'm going to keep grinding. And last night was actually a little rough, which is weird, but that was me again. It's anxiety of, the things that I'm thinking about, processing, being able to quiet the mind, where alcohol was that immediate thing to just like take my fast brain and just go, we're just going to shut that off. And if I use that my whole life, now I have to like deal with actually laying there thinking about things where I can't be like, as they say, too drunk to dream.
Yeah.
So
it's wild, man. It's, I don't know. Someone asked me the other day, like, hey, I was talking to someone that had stopped drinking, right? Or something like that. I don't remember the conversation, to be quite honest, but it was along the lines of, I just said, look, man, I remember now. I was talking to a friend and they were like, man, I think I'm just drinking and too much and, so much, whatever the reasons were. And I was like, okay. And they were like, well, I was like, they're like, have you stopped drinking? I was like, yeah, I'm on 23 months now, 22 months at the time. And like, how do you do it? I was like, I don't know. I just decided I wanted to experience other things in life, right? Like I said, I don't know if I'll ever drink again. I can tell you right now, without a doubt, I have no desire. There's times where I see a bottle of whiskey, just like you, or a good bottle of rum or bourbon, and I'm like, ooh. But I'm never really tempted to have it. I mean, especially now because they have like those Athletic Brewing Company, right? Like that.
Yeah.
Those
I just had one of those. Yeah. I literally had my first non-alcoholic drink in my entire life.
Yeah.
I just had it last weekend, and it was bizarre actually, because I was like, I didn't need it.
Yeah.
I was just like, I'm fine with just drinking like a Pellegrino or whatever. Yeah. I don't need to even pretend like I have a drink. It's not required. Like, I'll be like obviously having a glass of water, but that night I went home and I was getting in bed and I was like, I can still taste it. Like, I can still taste the beer, which is weird. It was almost like worse for me.
Yeah.
Cause I was like, oh, I'm kind of like, I don't know. It's
okay.
hard.
Yeah.
It's like I'm cheating on, like, I don't know. It's weird.
I will drink them. Yeah. Especially at Kent, right? I'll drink them.
They're good. I was blown away.
Love them. Right. I had a Bud Zero the other day. Cause where was I? I was at someone's party, someone's house. Right. And he had Bud Zeros. I was like, I'll drink one of these. Right. I drank one.
Yeah.
Because the rest of the night I was drinking water and I just needed a little something different besides a Coke Zero or
Yeah.
something. But I told them, my friend that I was talking about, I was just like, look, man, if you want to stop drinking, just stop drinking. And if you want to drink again, drink again. Like, just live your life. Be happy as long as you know you're not being detrimental to yourself. Like, no one's judging you. I don't know if that's true, but I'm not. That's for certain. I think now I'm at the point where everyone knows that I don't drink. Like, especially like our circle, right? And I know you and I kind of run.
It's impossible to hide it.
But we're kind of meshed in a sense.
Yeah.
And so everyone has been really good to me about it too. And that was the biggest surprise I feel like that I've experienced since I stopped drinking, was how many people support it. And I think that's the parallels between my civilian friends here and maybe some of my like if I was still in the military on a base or whatever, they'd be like, oh, you're a fucking pussy, like, let's go, don't be a bitch, you know, all of the toxic masculinity that I love. Right, like I love that shit, to be quite honest. It's fun, but it would have been like, hey dude, stop being a bitch, right? And I probably would have caved.
But I also think now you would be having done this long enough, you can come up with even more aggressive rebuttals.
Oh, now I
to
can.
Like how stupid you actually are. You know, like, but you want to be.
Back then I wouldn't have, right? But now, I would just laugh and be like, yeah, man, I'm the biggest wimp you've ever seen, man. Like, doesn't matter. Like, nothing phases me anymore. So what I appreciate is the fact that, like, when I do go to a place like him, like, the bartenders know I don't drink. They're like, hey, you want soda water with lime? It's usually like they'll have it ready for me as soon as I get up to the bar, right? Elijah and all those guys, like, wonderful staff. So they'll give me soda water with lime, or I'll take an Athletic Brewing, but like, not one person really has ever been like, you pussy or anything like that. When we play golf, right? Like, my buddy Dave, right? Like, he'll get his drink or whatever, and he'll always get me a Fresca. And be like, hey, you want the rest of this Fresca? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. So like, people look out for you generally, man. Yeah. And I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, I call it the I mean, I think one of the first books I had read on a woman's journey with alcohol, she just described it as somebody responding to you negatively when you tell them that you don't drink is like the asshole detector. And it's true, because like, you wouldn't ever tell somebody like, hey man, I quit smoking, and somebody would be like, you what? What's wrong with you? Everyone would be like, good for you, dude. Like, way to go. Like, congrats. But alcohol, again, you have, and this just goes to show, you don't have assholes in your life. You have good, meaningful, deep relationships, because when people do give you another response, you really can take account of that and go, man, that's bizarre to me that you're responding to me that way. And it's something that's like so hard for me to do. And I'm trying this, and you're like making fun of me. Yeah. That's crazy to me. But it reveals a lot about someone.
It does. And it's a good point that you make. I'm just happy, that I have really good people in my life. And look, my brothers from the military, right? The ones that care about me are obviously like super, super supportive, right? It's the other guys that you hang out with and you're acquaintance with and you're friends with, and you have their back, right? But they're not like they're not my kids' uncles or anything like that, right? It would be that, but no, I've been very fortunate with the circles that I run in, and sometimes I kind of fault myself on that because I'm quick to kind of cut people away. And I think that might be a toxic trait of mine that I have to work out. But I'm always going to be real with you. Some people take it, some people don't. But man, I had a buddy, one of my best friends in the world, man. And he was Irish, right? And sorry for the stereotypes. He was like 10 years older than I am, and I love him to this day to death, right? But I met him when I was 18 in the Army. And man, this dude could drink, like professional drinker. And I could never come close. And then I remember it was like 2014 or something. He came and visited me in DC, and we went to this bar called The Carving Room. So if you ever go to DC, if you're listening, go to The Carving Room, Noma. It's a wonderful spot. And we were watching football one Sunday. And I myself, it was the first time I ever outdrank him. And I was so proud of it. And I drank like 24 session IPAs. And we were there for like 7 hours, man. I think we had brunch.
I want to know what the caloric intake of that is.
I don't know, and I didn't care, as you could tell. Like, I don't care about caloric intake. I mean, I think I had like 3 pieces of pecan pie and some pumpkin cheesecake for Thanksgiving. And like, I just don't care. I think it's because I work out a lot, right? And, but yeah, the session IPA, but the alcohol percentage was really low.
Yeah.
I think it was like 3 something or whatnot. And I just remember it was like, man, I woke up ready to play, right? Like, I was like, man, I'm on my A game today. And I just drank and drank and drank. And I outdrank him. And I remember I was like, dude, I can't believe I outdrank you today. This is the first time I've ever outdrank you. And like, we laughed about it. And, you know, we were both shit-faced or whatnot. I didn't throw up or anything, man. It was like, it's a great time. But I think at that point, I was like, man, what am I doing? I drank a suitcase of beer sitting in a bar stool like this for hours watching football.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, God, you're, I have a saying, you are the average of the 5 people you hang out with most. And I think Warren Buffett says that, right? Don't quote me, but I think
we'll fact check it.
Yeah. Fact check that, right?
Yeah.
Jamie.
Yeah.
So you're the average 5 people you hang out with most. So when you hang out with people where their whole life is to go to the bar and drink, what do you think you're going to end up doing? Right? I hang out with people that have families now, and we have kids, and we have hockey 5 days a damn week and whatever else. And
those parents will still consume.
They do. I see them in the arena at 9 a.m.
Yeah. It's
drinking beers, right?
Yeah. Travel sports is just a amazing reason to also continue drinking.
But it's just
for parents.
It's just like, for the most part, we're not drinking suitcases of beer.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's have your beer or two or whatnot. Yeah. Last year I went to some guys that you definitely know. I don't want to call them out or anything. But we were at a garage watching the Lions one night. It was a Monday Night Football game, and my buddy gave me a Zin for the first time. I was like, okay, man, I'll do a Zin, right? And I did it. And I was just like, I don't know. And I started to get a buzz because I've been, Copenhagen free for 12 years now. And I threw up that night when I got home. I threw up and I told him about it. And I was like, I threw up, dude. That's wild. And he laughs at me. He was laughing at me the other night for that. And I think it's funny too. But Copenhagen, man, I would have, and maybe this is why I don't think I necessarily had a big drinking problem. It was a problem, but it wasn't like, I wasn't Nicolas Cage in Leaving Las Vegas, right?
Yeah.
Have you seen that movie?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great movie, by the way. And sad, but I remember watching that movie, I think when I was like 12 or 14 for the first time. And I didn't quite understand it. And I've watched it several times since. And then I was like, wow, that's really sad. But Copenhagen, also something that's very ingrained in military culture, right? Also baseball, right? Because I played baseball. We'd always have dips in, the umpires would come and check our mouths and I'd swallow it or whatever. And I remember one time my coach goes, no, that's just Dan. He's got really big gums. And rest in peace, Coach C.
Yeah,
and we won the state championship that year, right? But anyway, the point is I would have nightmares about being talked into having a big dip of Copenhagen. And in my dreams, it'd be so vivid. I would have a dip of Copenhagen in my dream. I'd finally do it. I would wake up in real life, like wake up from my dream, and I would be so disappointed in myself, like so disappointed, right? And then my mouth would hurt and my gums would hurt. And that went on for a very long time, like long time. And, and what I can say is that I haven't experienced that from stop drinking, right? So if anyone's out there listening and you're saying, man, I don't know if I can do it. I mean, you don't know if you don't try, right? And if you really think you should, then give yourself the opportunity to succeed, right?
Yeah.
And if you don't think it's a problem, which I know addiction doesn't tell you that it's a problem, right? You just do it and you think it's normal. then hopefully you'll listen to someone else that says maybe you should cut back a little bit. But it's not as hard as you think. And if you do like hard shit like I do, then you'll embrace it.
Well, beautiful. What would be your weekly intake? Or what was your, and again, it's not a
that's a great question.
Just like on average, I would say.
Yeah, I would say, COVID,
like drinking Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Yeah. Go pre-COVID, post-COVID.
7 days a week, just like you.
Okay.
Probably multiple mason jars of whiskey.
Okay.
I mean, I would drink a lot of Jack Daniels.
Yeah.
I also like my nice stuff, but
Evan Williams is what I switched to because I was like, Evan Williams is cheap, and if you were blind taste test,
yeah,
but bang for buck, Evan Williams was like, and I didn't discover that until a couple years ago.
Yeah,
and I was like, I just always had a half gallon.
I always just laughed at Jack Daniels, man, because it's well liquor, right? I was bartender, right? It's like, oh, you get some well liquor in there for a while, and then it stopped being well, but. Yeah, I would drink I would always drink out of a mason jar.
Okay.
And I'd probably put like one big ice cube in it, which would take up probably, a third of the glass.
Yeah.
And then I would fill the mason jar until the ice cube barely started to float. Right. So it's probably that much whiskey.
Yeah.
And then I would drink it. And then I'd go get another one. And maybe I'd get another one. What am I watching?
Yeah.
Next thing you know, I was probably buying a bottle of Jack every 3 days.
Yeah. Yeah. You're doing it. Yeah. You could do half a fifth.
Yeah.
Pretty easy. Maybe you do. Yeah.
No, I would do it when the kids went to bed.
Yeah.
Stay up late.
Doesn't the mason jar, I feel like that ice is going to come in. I mean, I think about drinking. That ice is going to come and slam you in the face because it's a tall, the mason jar is big.
It was like a 16-ounce mason jar.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I just think about having a drinking problem. I'm like, that would,
I mean, that just shows how much of a problem I had. I didn't even care.
You're just like
fucking smacking my nose, right?
Like I just
dude, I just got to get my fix, man.
That one huge ice cube coming. So post COVID, just sort of ratcheted up, which I did too. I mean, it was like but you're also again, so you ratcheted up every day. You were going every day until you saw in your My Chart or whatever that med chart.
For the most part.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was that, I've seen about this earlier, was that tumor, even though benign, at all related to any health explanation to it?
No.
Okay.
No. It just happened.
Okay.
I mean, I have my suspicions.
Okay.
Right. But it was there.
Yeah.
No side effects, no pain that was there. That's what's so wild to me, right? Like I was like, dude, I'm not even in pain, right? I didn't have a bulge coming out of my stomach. It was just in there. Yeah. Perfectly nestled. This is home.
Do you, again, hypotheticals are annoying. Could you or would you have potentially stopped drinking without that moment?
I don't think so. I don't. Why? Sometimes we need a reason to change. Sometimes we need a reason to take a detour. As Yogi Berra said, when you come to a fork in the road, take it. I took a fork. It felt like it was the right thing. It's a lot of good things that come from that. I mean, I also got closer to God, which I think is very important. I didn't grow up with that. I've seen a lot of bad things in my life. Again, in the military, most of the people I hung out with didn't really care about God, right? At least openly. I think we all had our faith. Like, I know that every time I left the wire, I would say the Lord's Prayer. And then my terp would say, Mr. Adam, he'd say, Bismillah Rahman Rahim, which means there's no God but God. And we would kind of say that together. And obviously I would say, the Lord's Prayer. And we'd fist bump each other and we'd go. But, dude, when combat's weird, man. Like, I didn't think I was going to live. I went to Iraq in 2006, 2007. So
you were confident you wouldn't come back.
Yeah, I was confident, right? Like, Lorenz is not my born name. It's my stepdad's name. Okay, so I changed my name on my way to Iraq because I didn't want my biological father's name on my tombstone.
Mm.
That's how sure I was that I was going to die and never come home. But also because my stepfather raised me as best as he could and gave me the tools that I have today. I wasn't with him long enough to have all of his tools, and that kind of sucks, right? But I am who I am, right? I mean, I didn't have a dad and then I had one, but to a certain extent, right? He was also older and stuff like that. But he didn't have any sons. And I was proud of him. And I think he was proud of me. And I just knew that when I died, I wanted Lorenz on the tombstone. I didn't want anything to be associated with my biological father. So, yeah, I mean, you go there and you just don't think that you're ever going to come back. And I was fine with it. I just signed up for it. It was a surge, right? Like, we're doing God's work, right? Turns out we weren't. But that's how I felt then. Fast forward to COVID, when I have the tumor and I got 2 little kids and I'm newly retired from the military. And what I realized is that I needed a mental shift. I had to go from being an animal to being a father, a husband, and someone who believes in Jesus Christ. So it was important to me that my kids grow up learning about Christianity and other religions, but having a foundation for faith for when they want to choose it on their own. I went to church growing up. Didn't mean anything to me. It was what it is, right? But it found me. I was ready when it was ready. Like, it was there. So I started going to church. I started bringing my kids to church. My daughter loves going to church. My son is just a good boy. He just does what he's told for the most part, after you remind him 30 times.
No, this is awesome. This is all stuff that I had no idea. But we don't know each other, but that's what's kind of cool about all this.
Absolutely. Right.
Yeah, keep going.
You just,
tell me.
If I'm ranting, man.
No.
Direct,
This
right?
is it. This is it.
My wife says, land the plane. And I'm like,
I
don't like landing. I like telling a story, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Get these flight hours in. I don't believe in coincidences anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I don't. I mean, my faith in like Jesus and God has grown so much in the past 2 years because I allowed it to, right? I have a reason to. And then I don't know, you just, look, I've been exposed to a lot of different religions. Like, my biological father was a Muslim, right? And there's a lot of trauma that goes along with that, and why he's probably no longer decided to be part of our lives, right? And I think I probably carried some of that with him, but my stepdad was a Catholic. And so that's when I got baptized as a Lutheran. That's why I go to the Lutheran church, right? But again, when you become a father, it is groundbreaking, right? Like, you change as a person, and probably more so than when you become a husband. And, to my wife's credit, I am probably a lot better father than I am a husband, right? And in the sense that, she understands, I think, at times. So you have to establish, like, you have to give kids that structure and that fatherhood. It's the most important job that we have in this world, I truly believe. And if I'm not behaving right, or if I'm not leading by example, then the only example my kids have is of a shitbag. And I need to break that as fast as possible, right? So I've been very fortunate. I've had a lot of near-death experiences in my life, like, very fortunate. And there's only one reason, right? I mean, it's not luck. It's something happened, whether we're in assimilation or whatnot. Like, I I don't know, but I know there's a higher power, and I'm just going to choose to go down the path of like Jesus and that path, right? But I know there's someone out there or some spiritual being out there that is helping us along the way and rewarding us for good decisions.
What did, yeah, powerful. But you just said this. How many near-death experiences do you think you've actually had in your life? How close?
I
Tell me.
always joke I have about 2 left if we did the 9 lives.
Okay.
That's what I joke.
Do you want to tell me a couple of them? Or is it?
Yeah. All right. So,
Because I do think, and I'll say this, because I do think that I do think alcohol plays a role in trauma.
oh, 100%.
I mean, it's like, I don't like, why are you drinking? It's because I would prefer not to think about what happened.
All right. So if we think about highs and lows, okay, you have to remember, look, I knew as much as I could know about what I was getting into when I joined the military, and then even more so when I joined the 82nd Airborne and then the Green Berets, right? I was like, they tell you this funny statistic, by the way. When you join the Army, and this is 1998, right? And we hadn't been to a large-scale conflict since Vietnam, okay? At that point. We had Desert Storm, but Desert Storm was 100 hours long. My brother was in Desert Storm, right? So that doesn't really count. Like, we went in there, we overflooded them, we pulled back, done, right? I know people died, but not as many, right? I knew Green Berets that were like 20 years older than me. So I was in my 20s and these guys were in their 30s and 40s, right? And I had come across them either on like hash runs or whatever. I don't know if you know what hash running is, but that's what we used to do a lot of that in Fort Bragg, right? Where you set the trail with like the chalk and one's the hare and everyone else is the rabbit. And you go on like these 9-mile runs and it's all drinking. And so you would have these stops where these coolers are and they're full of beer. And you would stop like 3 miles in and, someone had to flash their boobs or whatever. And then you would just drink like a beer. You'd pound a beer. And then you'd go on another 2-mile run with everyone. And then you'd drink beer there and you would have to find the trail, right? So the point is I met a lot of these guys, right? And that were in Desert Storm, and they had like one combat operation. They were there for like 5 months, 3 months, whatever it was, and they had one kinetic operation, maybe 2. When I went to Iraq, we had kinetic operations almost every other day, if not every day. So think about like what that does to the human mind, right? Like, one, I'm sitting in a house. I have like my own little trailer. It's my room. We got DVDs. I remember having a Christmas tree. like this is not how I imagined war. And war was not like that in the 2003 during the invasion, because I had my buddies that were in the invasion, right? But at this point, the military industrial complex came in and KBR and everything like that, and they built up all these amenities and they made it very comfortable in a sense, right? So here we are, all the ammo we could ever want, all the guns we could ever want. We were doing some of the highest regarded missions because we were an ODA. And it was, you'd go out and you'd get in a firefight. Like literally. Like you'd get ambushed, you'd get blown up. And I think I got hit in the proximity of over like 13 IEDs. We went through 8 Humvees, armored Humvees, on my 9-month deployment. So during that phase in the war, we were inundated with improvised explosive devices. And if you're a listener, you don't know what that means. At this point, they would bury bombs under the road, whether they were propane tanks, landmines, mortar shells, or artillery, whatever it was. And sometimes they were pressure released. So if you ran them over, they would explode like a traditional mine. Sometimes they were electronically detonated. So there would be a wire going across the road. And someone would be off, like in a tower, in a window of a building or whatnot. And he would literally just connect the circuit and blow you up as best as he could judge your rate of speed going, right? So that was our war, like for the most part. And so that's usually how most ambushes are initiated. I mean, that's what we're taught in guerrilla warfare, right? Like you would set up an ambush and you would have a machine gun either at the front of the ambush and at the back of the ambush, so that when a certain amount of people cross a certain line of no return, you would open fire, light off some bombs, whatever it was, and then you have them in this little vortex and you're just slaying the enemy, right? Well, we got involved in a lot of those we were ambushed. And so you would do this. You're going out of the wire. You're saying your prayers. You don't know if you're coming back. You look at your buddies, and all you know in the world at that point in time is, I'll do anything for these guys. Whether we're right or wrong, I'll do anything for them for the most part, right? To make sure that we get back. And you go out and you get in these firefights, and you shoot people, you get shot at, you get blown up, you blow people up, you call in artillery, you call in Apaches, whatever it is, and you slay. And then you come back home just in time for dinner, and you go to the chow hall, and you've got blood on your pants, you've got, whatever it is, your pistol still on you, and you go eat steak and lobster. Then you go to your room, you clean your weapons or the common area, and you watch The Office. Literally what we did all the time. And the next morning, you got a mission. Or that night, you have another mission. And you just repeat that cycle from life or death to like you're back home on the couch with mom, watching TV. Like, what does that do to someone? I mean, you're taking the most high of highs over and over and over. And like, we don't even have time to process it. Sorry. We don't have time to process that. So that's what a lot of veterans are going through right now is we have had extensive trauma related from our combat experience, whether we knew it was coming or not, it happens. Okay. And you go on these firefights and these missions, and you come back and you sleep in your warm bed, and you watch a movie and you laugh and you talk to your girlfriend, your wife, or whatever it is on the phone from 13-hour, 7-hour time difference, right? And you're like, okay, I love you. I'll see you soon. And then next thing you know, 20 minutes later, you're out slaying the enemy. That's insane, by the way. Insane. And so people wonder why we have a large homeless veteran population. We have a lot of veterans that are dealing with addiction issues, domestic violence, any other bad thing that you hear about. And it's because like no one got the treatment that they needed, whether they asked for it or not, right? And that's what we've asked them to do. And so when I look at that, David, it's I look back on that time and I say, that is wild, right? Like I'm literally trying to kill people and they're trying to kill me. And then I'm going home and I'm eating steak and lobster at a chow hall, and I'm cleaning my guns to get the opportunity to go do it again, which I loved, by the way. It was also one of the best times of my life, to be quite honest. It was wild. It was like the Wild West. And then you go out and do it again, and then you come home and everything else is a letdown. Like, what? So you're addicted to the adrenaline. You're addicted to like the thing of like, I survived. I'm a fucking survivor, right? And you go out and do it again and again, and you come home and it's like, well, how do we push that envelope? And you're not talking to a therapist or anything like that because it's so scrutinized in the military, even though they say it's not. It's like, oh, hey, I need to talk to someone. And it's like, oh, you have a TSSCI, you're a Green Beret. Oh, you've got severe PTSD. We're going to take away your ability to make a living. Like we're going to kick you out of the military, or we're going to take you out of your role and we're going to make you do an admin thing, like where you just work at a desk. And you're like, you can't do that to pipe hitters, man. And so maybe it's different now, but as I was growing up in the military, going deployment to deployment to deployment, my buddies were, talking about the trauma or the post-traumatic stress disorder or anything like that with a professional in the military was not the most encouraged thing to do. Let's put it that way. So what do? You turn to alcohol, turn to drugs, you turn to sex, you turn to whatever it is that lets you feel those dopamine rushes that we were talking about, right? And natural dopamine gets suppressed by these artificial dopamines, and that causes depression and other things. So it's traumatic. So to answer your question, yeah, I mean, we would go into hell. Like we would go into the hornet's nest. Like, well, one mission we had, my buddy Brian and I, he's my best friend in the entire world. Best friend in my entire world. Like we've never gotten in a single argument, man. Like we have been on the same page on everything. He's like the smartest dude I've ever met, by the way. The smartest. Like we used to call him an idiot savant. And he can do anything. He can do anything. He owns a brewing company, Vail Brewing Company. You should go see it if you go to Vail, Colorado.
Okay.
And man, I remember one time the Al Qaeda. There's this village called Little Albacete, right? And Al Qaeda had this. They would shoot sniper rounds at little Shia girls across the river. So Al Qaeda was Sunni, right? Which was like the Ba'ath Party, Saddam Hussein, etc. Right? Insurgents from other countries, and then you had the Shias, which was supported by Iran, a different type of Muslim denomination, essentially, right? If you were to think about it that way. And so this Sunni sniper, this Al Qaeda guy, would shoot in a tower across the river at kids playing, and so the Shias would come to us on our base, and they would say, and I was one of the intel guys, so I would take a lot of meetings during the day. I'd build these intelligence packets, and then I'd say, okay, guys, here's what we got. Do we want to go hit it or not? Right? And I would brief them all up on the intel. I'd get dual source in from intel, and then we would write up a con op, and it would get approved or not. And so we went in, and the mission was, hey, we're going to do a counter sniper operation. And so my buddy Brian was also the sniper on our team. And so he and I were inseparable. So I would go with him. I was a breacher. So I was a demolitions guy. So I was the one that was diffusing IEDs, blowing doors open, etc. And so I remember it was he and I, we had one of the Iraqi military guys that we had trained, and I would go on all of our operations with us. His name is Muhammad. And then we had our terp, one of our terps named Mikey. And they were both young. They were in their 20s. We gave Mikey the Saw, which was like a 249 belt-fed automatic weapon. Muhammad had, I think, an AK-47. We plussed him up with grenades and stuff like that. And Little Albacete was like a village, buildings on both sides, houses, couple rows deep, left and right. And then it would go to the north. It was just a big, long road, right? And we had battled there before. And then we left it for like 3 months. And then what they did is they built this big berm blocking the entrance in the front and the back. And and then they put IEDs all the way down the road. But we didn't know this till afterward, that morning. So our mission was to infiltrate, the four of us. We were going to walk in the middle of the night, occupy a building that we had scouted about 2 or 3 months prior, because we knew that it had good fields of fire, good overhead watch. But what we didn't know is that there was this berm blocking the entrance to the main village. And then second, are these houses going to be occupied? And we didn't know that. We didn't have the intel to do that. So Brian and I just said, okay, look, we're going to go, we'll infiltrate by foot with our 2 Iraqis, basically our terp and the lieutenant that we had, who was trusted, saved my life. Not that day, but different one. Was later killed by Al Qaeda. He was awesome. And so we walked in, and it was like 2 a.m, pitch black. And like I'm sneaking through the woods with Brian. Brian's got a sniper rifle. I had a grenade launcher. I had my M4 with scope on it. And then we had our other guys. And man, it was like a video game. It was like a movie that you see. Like, here I am. Like, this is a village that's occupied by probably 100 or 200 Al Qaeda fighters and their families. No one's going in there. Iraqis aren't going in there because they keep getting their ass kicked. Regular army's not going in there because it's too high risk. So we go in there.
There's 4 of you.
Yeah, 4 of us. And what we have is we have the rest of our team. So we had like 2 Iraqi Humvees, and then another US Humvee that was 2 miles away, because we couldn't come close, otherwise they would know. So they were 2 miles away, radio comms. And then we had 4 of our other guys, so 2 more Americans, 2 more Iraqis, infiltrated behind us like 2 hours later. And they got in a building that was like 3 buildings behind our building, but taller. And so they were actually going to be, we were going to be the bait, they were going to be the counter sniper. So we're on the rooftop, and it's wild, dude. Well, we get to the door, and I look at Brian because we can't talk. I post security. I take out my knife, and we have what's called like a Yarbrough knife for Chuck Yarbrough, right? And so we have I had my Yarbrough knife, and I had my sidearm. I had my night vision on. Brian, I gave him my rifle because he had a sniper rifle with him, bolt fit, right? So I gave him my rifle. I had the grenade launcher. I had my pistol, my knife, and we had to clear this building. And the bad part is like, dude, if we fire rounds, that whole village is going to react because we're literally 50 meters from the berm. And so we get in there, and I'm basically clearing in pitch black with a knife and a pistol. And luckily, no one's in there. But talk about the most scared you've ever been, right? Or ready. We get up to the top. We establish our position, pitch black. We set up our sectors of fire. We start scoping it out. And at daylight, right below us, so like here to the wall is like the road, right? Yep. We're 3 stories up. And so we just watched all night, man. Like these dudes would do patrols, and it would be men my age, right? In their black pajamas with their AKs, and they would patrol, and they had bonfires set up on the road past the berm and where the berm is. And we knew, and they were actively patrolling. And the craziest thing is I would see these guys walking with their kids, like their sons, 12 or 13, they'd be carrying AKs, and they would be patrolling. And I was like, man, this is wild. And at daylight, the call came down, and it was like, look, engage armed fighters. And so as soon as the daylight came up,
you and Brian.
Yeah.
And the other 2 guys were where? You and Brian are on the rooftop?
We're on the rooftop. My one guy's guarding the stairwell up to the rooftop, and then my other guy's guarding the back corner of the rooftop. And then we had 4 other guys, two other of the dudes on our ODA were like 3 houses behind us on a taller building. It was like a 4-story building. And so,
we'll get to there. If there's somebody in that building, I mean, you would have been dead. If you went in to clear that building and 1 gunshot went off, then they would have engaged. Then you would have hoped that those guys, you would have radioed in, but it would have turned into
QRF, like at a 2-mile drive. They would have busted butt. I think we had enough to suppress, hopefully.
Okay.
But I'll tell you what happened is,
now we're
comes in. We take our first shots. And then next thing you know, everything starts scattering. And the whole point was to draw that sniper out. Well, turns out the sniper was 90 degrees to our right in a building across the street. That was his perch, and we didn't know that. We had to draw him out.
That close?
Yeah. 25 meters.
Okay.
Right across the street. It was just a street.
Yeah.
Dirt road, and that's where he was. And he's nailing us, and we don't even know. But he's shooting at us. And then our guys behind us are like, we have the sniper. It's like, you guys need to get out of there. And we don't hear because RPGs are coming. Like, they're just unleashing on us, right? We got the QRF coming. And so we're in a firefight. And Brian is just like just trying to put as many dudes down. I'm trying to coordinate because I'm the only one with comms for some reason. I always had comms. And so we're talking, I'm trying to get air support in. I'm spotting for Brian. I'm like, dude, 300 meters by that, whatever it was, right? He's adjusting. I'm trying to shoot. I'm shooting up a couple grenade launchers, and we're just getting overloaded. But the funny thing is like, we didn't know at the time because we're so involved in what we're doing. And that's like the fog of war, right? And then finally the guys behind us are like, you guys need to get the hell out of there right now. Like, get out of there. They're swarming to you. And at that point I had to like pull Brian down. My guys get out. We get to the bottom of the house. We have to fight. We have to clear the bottom way out just to make sure no one's in there. And then we basically fight our whole way out of the village. So we're running from building to building. They're aggressively approaching, like we're running out of ammo, we're doing cover fire, throwing smoke, like everything you see in video games, all that. It's wild, right? And then finally our vehicles come up.
They made video games based on what you did.
I guess, yeah. It's hard for me to think
They're
about
like,
that, right?
Yeah, they're like, well, this is that's okay.
And so they start getting suppressive fire going. Boom, IED. Okay, so now we got a down vehicle, right? And it was an Iraqi one. We're like, oh crap! Now we're in rescue situation here, as well as trying to make sure that we get out of this hot zone. So that goes on probably for an hour. Which seems like eternity, right? It doesn't seem like a long time. Like you could take a shit for an hour,
I was gonna say, if you said longer than like 15 minutes,
Yeah.
I mean, again, I've never remotely experienced that, but I mean, that would feel like an eternity, right?
So, and I had, Mike, I'll just never forget these visions of like smoke. We're bounding from building to building. I'm yelling in Arabic to my guys because I went to Arabic language school, so I'm speaking Arabic to them as best I could. And then, I just remember him like poking around a corner like fucking John Rambo, man. This is my Iraqi interpreter who's been blown up, threatened by Al Qaeda, everything, right? And he's just like, and he's just whole drums of amp just spraying at these guys, right? And it's like you gotta grab them and pull them back. And so, look, that was close, but there was other ones that were also a lot more close. Like you would see a runner and you would chase them and you would say, runner, runner. And you would chase them down and another situation. So anyway, we extracted from that position. We didn't get the sniper. My guys couldn't get a good shot on him. They tried. We retreated, essentially. We didn't penetrate the village at all. Well, we did come there 2 days later though. And we came with like 8 Iraqi Humvees. They each have about 5 or 6 people in them. So we had like a whole company of Iraqis with us at this point, and then a whole another 2 ODAs. And we attacked this village from both ends. And that's when we were really clearing villages, going into the hand-in-hand stuff. And that's when I would say like my Iraqis kind of saved my life, because I was about a month away from leaving, maybe a month and a half, and they wouldn't let me at that point. They wouldn't let me lead my way into the room
because you were that close.
Yeah, they knew it too. I would look. Part of the job of a Green Beret is to win the hearts and minds, right? You're supposed to assimilate with the culture that you're supporting. Like that's why I was really drawn to Special Forces and the Green Berets, right? Because of the guerrilla warfare, stuff like that, right? So you're really drawn to them. So I would go over there and I'd bring them Gatorades because they didn't drink, right? So I would go and we'd smoke a hookah and I would go hang out in their barracks and I would just talk to them like people. And they built up a bond with me. And though, you shouldn't trust anyone unless they have that American flag on their uniform. And I would say there was a few of them that I really did trust, because you have to be able to read people in this game, right? Like you have to. And they've done a lot. Those guys, Hammer, Abbas, Mikey, Muhammad, those 4 dudes. I mean, those were my boys, man. Like, they would look out for me nonstop. But there's a lot of times where we got blown up. I was in a Humvee. It just gets cloudy. Your vehicle's broken. You got to get out. Look, I left Iraq with not a single scratch on my body. Right? Like, I don't know how. But I'll tell you what we did when we went home. Drank. To bring it all back, right? Like my buddies, we had a lot of Purple Hearts, had a lot of guys getting sent home. I lost a lot of friends that were killed from sniper rounds or whatnot while I was there. So we've seen all that. I've experienced all that. Like we'd go to chow, right? Dinner time, we'd get back from a firefight. I would see these 19-year-old kids just crying on the steps, man, because their best friend's dead, because they would get blown up like crazy. Because they would just drive in these big convoys real slow and IEDs. and we would go out and do QRF for them or whatnot, because it was just the way that it was. They had to move in these big units where we were able to be very nimble. Like we were able to go on our feet or take a helicopter ride in, or do things that the regular Army wasn't supposed to do. So when you mix all of these experiences up, there's a lot of trauma there, right? But you don't really think about it at the time. You're just kind of like living the life, and you don't know when it'll be your last day. You just make it happen, and you keep going forward, right? And there's times where you fuck up, right? And that hurts you a lot on the inside, man, because you're supposed to be like at the top of your game, and like you make a mistake, just like a quarterback throwing an interception or whatnot, and that sucks a lot. Like think about Pat Tillman, right? Like that whole experience, a mistake, honest mistake, right? It's the fog of war. So you've got to learn to deal with all of those things. And I think to draw it all back for the listeners, right? It's, I don't know why, but my algorithms are always showing me stuff about trauma now. And I think you got to think about the things that you've been through and be honest with yourself and say, is that normal? Now, maybe back in the Roman times that was normal, or in the days of Sparta, right? But normal is relative at this point. We live in a different world, in a different society, in a different culture for us. And so some of those things are going to come back, and how you deal with them is going to set the stage for the rest of your life. And it's going to set the stage for your kids, right? You can drink them away. You can numb them with drugs and alcohol and other stuff. You can get fat and not work out, and eat junk food and not care, right? Like you can do a lot of things, but I tip my hand to, my brothers and sisters in uniform and anyone really that's gone through trauma, whether it's abusive parents or relationships, etc., that choose to go about healing themselves and trying to live a fruitful life outside of vices, even though we do need vices here and there. Like we need our own vices. I believe in that. Now, do they have to be detrimental and deadly? No, right? So I applaud people that go through that process, right? I don't care if anyone was an alcoholic or a drug addict or anything like that. What I care about is did you have the support that you needed to change your life? And I'm not going to sit here and tell you over and over to do that. I firmly believe that you have to be ready. You were ready after that game. Like I was ready. I just knew I was ready to stop. And I don't know why, but I feel like it's helped a lot. It's helped me understand certain things. It's helped me be clear-headed, like you alluded to in the very beginning of our conversation. It's helped me get closer to God, which is probably something that is very important to me. And so I applaud anyone who's going through what you and I are going through. There's a guy I want you to talk to. I'll give you his name after this. His name's Steve. He goes to Cascade. But he goes to the gym with me. He's 55, I think, from Philly. Awesome dude. Well, we're on a hunt lease together. So we were hunting last year, opening day. We both shoot deer. We have like 140 acres that we hunt. And we're cleaning our deer. And then our other two buddies were with us. And we were like, hey, go. You guys are going to go home real quick, change. We'll meet at this restaurant to have brunch, right? And then we'll go back out for the night. And Steve and I were in the car. And I was driving because we were taking our deer to the processor out in Lowell. And so we had time to talk. And I had never really had extended conversations with him that much, right? We just knew each other from the gym. And we were both the old guys at the CrossFit gym. And CrossFit Luminary, if you guys are in Grand Rapids, I would go there. And we started talking. And August that year, so right before, so this was November. In August, he played a golf tournament with me and Dave McKelvey, right? Okay. And Steve and I were in the cart together. And he was like, are you not drinking, man? And I was like, no. And he's like, why not? I was like, I don't drink anymore. So at this point, it had been like 7 months, 6 months. He's like, how long? It's like 6 months. And he's like, why? And I kind of told him, like, man, I thought I had cancer, or I have a tumor in me, like, whatever. He's like, oh, wow. And then we go hunt. Now we're in the car. We're taking our deer to the processor 3 months later, 2.5 months later. And his brother was a veteran. I don't want to steal his thunder, man, but alcoholic and committed suicide like 3 days before or 3 weeks before or something like that. Something soon. And I was like, oh my God, I am so sorry to hear that. Right. And he's like, no, thank you. And stuff like that. And he goes, I just want you to know that it's been like 2.5 months since I quit drinking. I said, what? And he goes, dude, that cart, like sitting in the golf cart with you in August or whenever it was, made me think about a lot of things. And I just decided to stop. And I was like, man, that's powerful. Well, he's still sober. He's still sober, man.
That's crazy.
And every time we see each other, it's just like,
isn't it funny though? He didn't tell you.
no.
Like it is a weird thing how we are influencing people's lives in sharing this. And this buddy, the guy that's on the first episode, Joe, that's in Phoenix, he never told anyone that he wasn't drinking. And I said to him on the second episode that we just released, I'm like, Joe, you got to tell people.
Yeah.
So he started doing it and he goes, this is crazy. I start telling people that, and it's like, it changes people's lives. Like it does. It makes them make, so.
It does. It changes people's lives. I'm always so excited, man. Like, again, dude, can you like think of how hard it is to just stop drinking if you have a social circle? It's hard. Like, why do you even go out?
Yeah.
Right? You can't go to a bar, right? Like, it's boring, right?
Yeah.
I go for good food and stuff like that because my friends want to go there, and sometimes I do need that interaction. But you're right, man. It changes people's lives. But here's the thing, like, I don't want anyone to get, like, I'm not a pro at this, right? Like, I just stopped because I wanted to stop. In fact, I gotta tell you, like, my sergeant major.
Yeah, keep this. I just want to see your face a little bit more.
Oh yeah,
you're good. Oh, you're good. Right there.
My sergeant major, his name's Gary. He has known me for a very long time. We went to combat together as well, and he's just one of the coolest dudes. And he was an alcoholic. And, he was one of the first people to start talking about how and everyone knew he was an alcoholic. Like all of our crew knew. We're like, oh, Gary, yeah, alcoholic, right? But functioning, right? Nicest guy, nicest, most fun dude ever, competent, amazing, man. And then he started telling me, like, before I quit drinking, before I found out about my tumor, stuff like that, how he quit drinking, and we kept in touch, right? So that was the first person to tell me that they like stopped drinking that I knew drank a lot. Then I stopped, and then Steve stopped. And then, I mean, I don't know who else probably hasn't told me, but they don't need to, but I'm always happy to help. I'm always happy to have a small, tiny role in that, whether it's just an idea or a light bulb or whatnot. But again, look, just don't get discouraged if you stop drinking for 3 months and then you have a drink here and there. And then it's like, there's no necessarily right or wrong way to do it. You got to do what's best for you and best for your family. I truly believe that. And I will say that the longer you go without drinking, the easier it is to never start drinking again. Right. Absolutely. Because now, like I said in the beginning, I love hard shit, man. And I don't quit. So like the joke we always had was, I'm too dumb to quit. Right, Ken? So too dumb to quit or too stupid to quit. Like that was always our thing. Like, oh, why are we walking 30 miles with 100 pounds on our back or whatever, right? Like stupid army stuff, right? Where you're just suffering. And we just look at each other and be like, well, we're just too dumb to quit. I guess we're just going to keep going until we get to the end, right? And so I always tell people, now I'm just too dumb to quit, right? I'm too dumb to quit not drinking. That makes sense. Before I was too dumb to quit drinking. Now I'm too dumb to not quit drinking, right? Or to quitting drinking. So don't get discouraged. Just live your life and be happy. And if it involves no alcohol, then don't drink it, man. And if you want to have a drink here and there, go have a drink here and there. But make it here and there. But you know who you are. That's the other thing, right? Like don't lie to yourself. Just be honest with yourself. You either need to have a drink or you possibly don't. And then try to think of it that way. But look, I'm not an AA counselor, man. Like, I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just a guy that I make binary decisions, and then I just try to see how long I can do them for. And it's just gotten to a point at 22 months where it's not in my mind. It's not in my mind. Like, I'm done. Like, something I don't want. I don't care if I ever go do the Bourbon Trail anymore, or any of that. It's not where my priorities are.
It's awesome. There's so much. We literally could do 3 parts of this. I think one of the questions I would have would be, and I made the comment earlier in terms of what you accomplished in the midst of drinking and now without it. I guess in an encouraging word to others, it's hard to imagine without, until you do it, stop drinking. But I guess, like, in your personal experience, like, how much easier do things become for you to do now? And I do think, like, I know you like hard shit. I get that. And drinking and doing life simultaneously actually makes it really hard. So it is easier now, but it allows you to do, maybe just talk to me just a little bit about what life looks like without it.
Yeah.
And what are you capable of now?
I feel like I'm capable of anything, right? Like, I feel like there's no limitations. That's the best part. Whereas if we go back to the beginning of the story, when my wife told me we were joining a country club, and I thought it was the country club that was walking distance from my house, which would have been the best case scenario so that I could still go to the country club and drink my ass off and walk home and not get a DUI. As opposed to now I can join any country club because I don't care about that. That's why I'm so happy at Kent. I'm happy it's 15 minutes away, right? Like, it gives me time. So what am I capable of now? Anything. I'm not bound by it. I'm not bound by the effects of it, the day after effects, or that night, right? I don't have to worry about picking up my car in the morning and putting a whole nother stress level on my wife because I want to go have drinks with the boys on a Tuesday night. And then I was too drunk to drive. So I got a ride from someone, or I took an Uber, but I left my car downtown. And now we have to get the kids to school, get them, and then I have to find a way out to my car. And then I have work, and my wife has, like that's normal shit when you drink a lot. And that's a pain in the ass for everyone. So what can we accomplish? Like, a better life. I will tell you, I accomplished a lot of stuff under the influence of alcohol, but it's also when I made the worst decisions of my life. Who doesn't make horrible decisions when they're under the influence of alcohol? And if you're really going to scrutinize yourself and take stock of who you are as a man and as a person, you need to be serious about that. And you need to say, which decisions have I made in my past that I regret? And of those decisions, which ones were made under the influence of alcohol? I'd be hard pressed to meet anyone that 9 out of 10 of them weren't. Because you just don't make horrible decisions when you're sober.
Unless you're a sociopath.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. Yeah. Like, now I have so much time to think about, cause and effect, right? If I do this is what's going to happen, or this is going to happen. What do I want to happen? Like, what do I know want to happen? This is what I want to happen. Okay, well, I've got nothing impeding me at this point, so I'm going to go that way. I have no other side conversations in my head or anything like that, or hopium, right? Like, maybe this will just work, right? I'm not going to go gamble my mortgage or like it's, and I'm not saying that those things happen, but no, I think of something now and I say, can I achieve this? What does it take to achieve this? And then there's a whole nother analysis that goes into it. But I'll tell you what's not stopping me is when I'm going to go to the bar, when it's happy hour, how am I going to feel tomorrow? And what kind of pain am I going to cause my family if I may do something stupid like get a DUI? That will cost what, like $9,000? If you look at just from the price point, if you don't kill someone, have you ever seen that movie Shot Caller?
Mm-mm.
Oh, dude, it's the dude that plays Jaime Lannister in Game of Thrones.
Okay.
one of my favorite movies of all time.
Okay.
But that's literally how it starts, man. And I remember watching that movie during COVID also, like 3 glasses deep in bourbon, right? And this dude gets in I don't want to ruin the plot, but like it's a whole downfall, man. But it's not like the Michael Douglas like falling apart or anything like back in the day. Like it's totally different. It's about prison and stuff like that. And crazy. You know, you could have all the success in the world. You can be a great lawyer. You can be an awesome financial advisor or whatever, a football player. And you get in an accident with alcohol in your system, man, and you hurt someone, it's done. So now you got irreparable damage to generations under you. Like your children are going to face those consequences. And what are those consequences? It's not going to jail or not. It's like visiting you in jail or not. But most importantly, it's not having a father in your life. And that, to me, is the most important thing in this world, is to have a father in your life. There's too many, and I didn't have one for a long time, right? So I understand how valuable it is, or I can, where we live in a culture and a society where too many people are growing up without dads. And I'm not saying it's all because they went to jail because they were drinking, but if we look at what children need, man, is they need that nuclear family, right? That we heard about so much in the past 7 months during the election season, right? And so I believe in it, right? Like you need a mother and a father. They offer you different things, and I don't want to do something where I am taken away from them or put myself in a situation to be taken away from them, because it doesn't, like, I can do anything. I've already spent time in SEER school and in little boxes and jail cells getting beat up, right? Like I don't care about that. Dude, my son needs me. Like I look at that kid every day, man, and he asks me questions. And I can see like how much he needs me because he's learning. Who else is he going to turn to? No one. My daughter? Oh, come on. I saw this video the other day on X or whatever, and it was like this girl, she was like talking about her body count. And she was like, oh, my body count's like 450. And then this other girl pops in, right? And she goes, oh, girl, I can totally relate with you. I could, except for this one really annoying thing that my dad used to tell me all the time. What was it? I love you. That's what it was. Right? And to me, like that clicked so much because I was like, yeah, so maybe some of these people are growing up without a father figure, a positive father figure, right? I'm not talking about a drunkard that's beaten their mom or anything like that, like my dad was, right? But like a positive father figure in their life. So what can I accomplish to answer your question? I'm sure my wife is like, you land the plane, Dan. Anything. But what am I driven to accomplish is to make sure that my kids have a happy upbringing, make sure that they have the tools they need to succeed when I'm no longer here. And I feel like I deserve that as well. I think that's something we shouldn't forget. Like you deserve to be happy yourself, right? Like you deserve to experience those things with your kids outside of the hangover or the haze, etc.
Well, then that's in that idea of happiness too. That's why, like, oh, if somebody said, "Oh, you can't drink anymore," I'd say, "Well, you're robbing me of my happiness," and yet that's just not how it works. Like your true happiness actually can come when you stop doing this one thing that is extremely self-serving. Like the act of drinking is just simply put a selfish act. It is a complete, like there is nothing more narcissistic about having a drink. And so that's where you just realize like, oh man, that's what's happening there. And if you pay attention to that and realize, well, that's what's going on, is it's me wanting to feel happy. And then you realize like, whoa, there's actually there's a happiness that lasts for a couple hours there, but you can only get back up to then like baseline, kind of deal. And, but there really is, I did not believe it, that I would actually feel some of the emotions that I feel now and like some of the joy. Like we were just out, we take the boys out sledding. I mean, we're doing like 3 a days, like sledding. They're like, let's go in the morning. Let's go in the afternoon. Can we go when it's dark? I'm like, sure. And I'm just like,
sled on the course.
Yeah.
And what hole?
In all of them. We just, we normally will go
up the hill from where you
Yeah, you could go 4 is a good one.
Yeah.
But then I was like, hey, do you guys all want to go on a super steep one? Because you actually go up to 7 green and go back down 7.
Oh,
so
yeah. Okay.
that's like a double tier. So you go down and then you know where the silver tee boxes are? So you go down straight down and then, move over to, I mean, 8 tee box. It's a pretty quick drop off. So so it's super fun. But just being there and just like, I would have had a Yeti with me. Like out there with them sledding.
What about Halloween?
Like, exactly. Like we did it again. A lot of these are my first, right? I just did Halloween.
Yeah.
Just did Thanksgiving. I posted this. I think, Pat, what did I say? I was like, oh, I know. And again, I said on Instagram, I know what it feels like the day after Thanksgiving. I'm not judging. And then I put a link to the show. And I'm like, cause I know exactly what it is. I know it's like, there's no surprises there. Like everyone knows exactly what it's going to feel like. But I always say the other thing is you never wake up the morning after not drinking and say, man, I wish I had just gotten loaded last night.
Yeah.
You never ever say it. You're always like, man, I'm just really grateful that I got through another night of just making the right decision, because today is a lot more optimistic than it was before.
Yeah. It's crazy, man. I'm very fortunate. I'm just fortunate, right? Like, I find that I'm unfortunate in certain ways that my mind works. And then I'm very fortunate in the ways that it works too. And I don't know if it's because I'm just stubborn or hard-headed or combination of all of it, resilient and persistent, right? But it's definitely, worth it. Like it's fun. And so, like I remember when, well, didn't I tell you? Oh yeah. I guess I just should have started when we started talking. I had this guy named Lieutenant Nelson, right? And that was the first person I ever met that didn't drink. And he was what's called a straight edge. And so he had like that triple X tattoo on his neck.
That was like a thing.
He was from VMI. He went to VMI, right? Like, and I knew him for 20 something years. I still know him. And from what I know, he's been straight edge the whole freaking time. Right. And I remember looking at him when I was 18, he was 21 or 22, whatever it was, and going, that's just fucking dumb. Right.
Yeah.
And I look back and I'm like, I was fucking dumb. Right. I mean, he accomplished a lot. And I do wonder, look, man, we used to drink until 3:30 in the morning, and then we would wake up at 5 and go run 8 miles in formation, which is the hardest thing to do, running in formation. It's so miserable. Like it was nothing. I would have no sleep that entire day and I would go do my job, right? Hungover, couldn't eat, weak, go to bed at 6 p.m. when we got off or whatnot, and repeat. Maybe wake up by 9 and go to the bar again, get some dinner, right? I don't know. It's just wild what you can do when you're younger and full of alcohol and hungover. And I just have no desire to do it again, especially with kids that love to wake up at the butt crack of dawn, dogs that are starving at 5 a.m. I can't do it. I'm just like, dude, all right. When I get up, I get up. I'm like, let's go. So,
man, thank goodness for a tumor in your abdomen.
So I think about that, man. I think about that. I just don't know if I would have stopped drinking if I didn't have that. To be entirely honest, man. Because like I said, it wasn't in my mind. Which I guess, if you have a problem, you're never thinking about stopping drinking anyway.
Yeah.
Right? Granted, my problem wasn't violence. It wasn't throwing up or DUIs or anything like that. It was just long nights of drinking alcohol by myself.
And the interesting thing is, I mean, the way that you talk about your kids and your family is that you were still drinking when they were little.
Yeah.
Same as me.
Yeah.
Like this is just all, I mean, my boys they're born on the exact same day. They're about to turn 5 and 6, January 26th.
What?
Yeah.
They're
so
not twins?
no, 1 year apart on the
And on
day.
the same day?
Yeah, that's wild.
That is wild.
I know. The doctors actually were like, we've actually never seen this before at the hospital.
I wonder how many times that's ever happened.
I think it's
history.
pretty rare. I've looked it up.
Yeah.
But the only people I know of that I've ever met is a girl and a boy, brother and sister, that were born a year apart on the same day. I actually met them, but I've never heard of anyone else.
Was it like close? Was it like almost approaching midnight to when they would have been?
No, it was just like,
come on, honey,
and I'll say,
push it out.
Even on the second one, this is Charles, firstborn's Coulter. It was Charles. Are we good on batteries? 10%, we're good. I had not been drinking because I thought she was going to have, the baby any day. Yeah. And she just didn't. She didn't have the baby. And so finally, I'm like, the night before, I knew it was Coulter's birthday the next day. I'm like, there's no way. The odds of that are impossibility. So I drank. So I like kind of tied one on. And then she that morning woke me up. She's like, I'm having contractions. And it's always, even on the second born, you're like, I'm like listening to you, but I'm like, why don't you go take a shower, count them? I
need 5 more minutes of sleep.
Exactly,
right?
Which is wild. That's like my response.
Yeah.
Like when you really think about it, your wife is having contractions. And I'm like, hey, I'm going to just lay here for a while longer. And I'm also like, there's no way that you're having a baby on the exact same day.
It's going to be fine. She's been carrying this thing for 9 months.
Yeah. So then bam,
not drinking,
went right to the hospital.
And your dumbass is like our dumbass, right?
Yeah.
Like, and it's, just give me 5 more minutes of sleep. It's not that important.
Yeah.
Like
so again, so selfish. It's incredible what our wives actually, how loving your wife probably is. I know mine is. I married an angel, luckily. But like I said, marriage is harder than being a dad. Being a dad is easier for me. Marriage is still difficult. But it's getting better. And I would say not drinking, it definitely makes it, you're able to learn. Like I'm able to learn alcohol. You just can't, the needle never gets moved. You're like stuck in this place in life. Like you're just not going to mature. Like you're just going to blame. Like you're going to blame, you're going to be angry, you're going to be bitter. Like you're just going to, like it's her fault. And you just never can see it until you're like out of it. But
it's wild. Like how much money did you spend on alcohol also?
I did. When I first stopped drinking, I did have a counter. Like it was telling you like how much you were saving. Yeah. Although I would say you and I probably, I would drink by myself at home.
Yeah.
So I was like, it really wasn't that expensive. Like if I was
down, like, but it was
going
to Total Wine.
Yeah.
2 or 3 times a week.
Yeah.
And when I was going there, I was spending $200.
Yeah.
So that's been the most insane thing to me. Is how much money I spent on alcohol. Like a bottle of whiskey is what, $60?
Yeah, I mean that's why I downgraded to the Evan Williams. I was like, I can get a half gallon for, I don't know, you could probably get it for $40. That's a lot. That's a lot of, but
what do you like, do you envision, like, how do you envision the next 5, 10 years of your life alcohol free? And like, what are your hopes? Like, what are your hopes that you're able to accomplish that maybe were inhibited by alcohol?
Everything.
Yeah.
I think this would be, well, you're certainly not going to make a sobriety podcast while you're drinking, but something where I think like I always, you say being held back by alcohol. I always use it as the golf analogy is the governor in the golf cart, right? Like there's that governor that's making the golf cart go a certain speed. You cannot go beyond that speed. And so for me, in combination with me improving my sleep, I just think that it really is limitless. Again, right? Bradley Cooper, he's sober, right? I think he's in that movie, right? Isn't he the one?
Limitless.
Limitless. Yeah, he takes the pill.
Is he sober in real life? Yeah.
Yeah. He's one of the people that I like somehow gained my bravery from. I listened to the Smartless podcast.
Oh yeah. Smartless.
Yeah. So
That's
Jason
funny.
Bateman, Will Arnett, and they had Bradley Cooper on. And just, there was a bunch of guys over and over. And I'm like, You haven't had a drink for 20 years. You haven't had a drink for 20. If you live in the circles that you live in, and I think that like, oh, my country club is heavily influential, whatever. Like so they were braver than I was. And I'm like, Josh Brolin.
Yeah. You brought
Great
him up on the
example.
first
Yeah. Like,
podcast, right?
yeah. I'm
Donald
like, oh
Trump.
man. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
No
exactly.
alcohol.
Yeah.
I mean, George Bush.
His dad was a drinker, I think, or his brother was. One of Donald Trump, I think his brother. It goes on and on. Eminem, I didn't know.
Yeah.
He had, he's 25 years, something like that. Doesn't look like it. Sorry.
No.
But I would say, to be honest, like I put this in the universe. I'll put it on the show. I mean, I believe that I could interview those people and there's a place in this show. So if you were to say 5-10 years, like, I mean, I think that would be a goal. I mean, I've interviewed, presidents, CEOs. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm good at it, but I would say at least I can facilitate the space to let people do what, like you just shared with me. I mean, we could go forever. We could do 3 separate episodes on some of this stuff, but to peel back some of those layers, it helps me stay accountable. It helps me understand myself better by listening to other people. And so that would be one thing. I mean, just with with my marriage, with being a dad, like just really like improving all of these areas. Like I think that's what I want to be able to do. And I was not, I was just like getting by. Like that's all you're doing is you're just surviving. You're not thriving. Right? I can't coin that. Yeah. But yeah, you're surviving instead of thriving. And so I think that would be what I'm hoping to do. And it's fun, man. I just bought a house on Lake Michigan.
Nice.
We're remodeling it right now. Those are the types of things like I really do believe that would have never happened with alcohol.
Do you think alcohol creates uncertainty in your life?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Anxiety, fear, all these there's no,
unnecessary uncertainty, right? So like, would you have bought that house in Lake Michigan if you think you were still drinking the way you were?
No, I told my wife, I was like, I don't know how you're going to process this, but I'm making some massive financial decisions for our life. Yeah. But it's because I can clearly see it. Like I can clearly see that this property is now going to then be a rental property. And we're also going to I'm going to go backwards financially for a little bit, but I promise you this is going to work long-term, where in the past I would have just looked at my little nest egg, kind of held on to it. And I don't know, just same way. Not that I'm not a risk taker, but I can take pretty massive risks now because I realize how short life I don't know. It's interesting. Alcohol just delays the inevitable, which is death.
Yes.
It's coming. And so, yeah, it's fun to just say, hey, I'm going to actually be a part of this life and be present.
I want to touch more on that another time about the things that we're doing now as men, business owners, family men, and how that's different than how we were doing things prior to quitting alcohol, right? I saw this video multiple times. It's on the internet. And it's I don't know if you've ever seen it, if the listeners have ever seen it, but it's this professor and he has this big mason jar. And he puts a bunch of golf balls in it.
Okay.
And he asks everyone in the class, and he goes, is the mason jar full? And it's got 15 or 20 golf balls, but something like that. And they all say yes. And then he takes out these pebbles and he pours the pebbles into the mason jar and they filter through the cracks of the golf balls. And he goes, is the mason jar full now? And they all say yes. And then he brings out a cup of sand and he pours the sand in the mason jar. It all fits and it all filters through the cracks. And he goes, is it full now? And they say, yeah. And he goes, well, think of the golf balls as your family, your friends, your passions, right? Think of the pebbles as things that are less important, like your house. They're important, but they're less important, like your house, your car, a couple other things. And then the sand is the small stuff. It's the stuff that doesn't really matter. So what would happen if you started this mason jar and you put the sand in first and then you put the pebbles in? You wouldn't have any room for the golf balls. So the whole point of that is when we prioritize things that aren't important, like alcohol or other things, we don't have time and room for the things that are, like our passions, like our family. like our friends. And to me, that just resonates really large because I'm a very visual person. And so when I see that, and I'm like, that makes so much sense, man. And what we were doing is prioritizing things that don't really matter. Alcohol, stuff like that. And it was taken away from the things that do matter. And now we've inverted that to where we don't prioritize that as much as we used to, if at all, some of those things, right? And now we have all this time for family, business, friends, our passions. I a podcast, working out, playing golf, going on trips, stuff like that. And so if you're a listener, I don't have a visual aid for you. I'm sure you could find that video, use Grok or whatever. Some AI will probably find it for you. But that's how I like to think about it. So thanks for having me on today.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed getting to know you. I hope we continue, hanging out, getting to know each other, play some golf in the summer, sim league. But I'm very grateful for this opportunity to speak and to come on your show, which I think is awesome. I think you changed your logo from the first episode to the third.
He did it. We were just the other day. We were like, hey, we should probably get a logo for this.
But it's cool. I like it. So thanks for everything, David. I appreciate you, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here.
Yeah.